Thanks for downloading a 3CR podcast. 3CR is an independent community radio station based in Melbourne, Australia. We need your financial support to keep going. Go to www.3cr.org.au for more information and to donate online. Now stay tuned for your 3CR podcast.
Sabah al-Khair. Good morning, dear listeners. You're listening to Radio 3CR on 855 AM and Palestine Remembered with Yusuf Ahmed al-Rimawi, Nasser Mashni and Robert Martin. Thanks for tuning in to another edition of Australia's only radio program that is totally dedicated to the Palestinian cause in English language. We would like to welcome our listeners on the AM dial and those who will join us later on the website 3cr.org.au/podcasts. In today's episode, we will be talking via Skype from Doha, Qatar, with Dr Ramzy Baroud, a Palestinian academic and activist. Stay with us and enjoy the episode.
Listeners, we're very excited to be joined today via Skype by Dr Ramzy Baroud, who is a US Arab journalist, media consultant, author, internationally syndicated columnist, the editor of Palestine Chronicle since 1999 to present, the former managing editor of London-based Middle East Eye, former editor-in-chief of the Brunei Times, former deputy managing editor of Al Jazeera. He's served as the head of AlJazeera.net English Research and Studies Department. He's the author of 3 books. And he's a doctorate of philosophy in Palestine studies from the European Centre for Palestinian Studies at the University of Exeter in 2015. A most impressive man. So thanks again for joining us, Ramzy. Ramzy, you know, you're a very accomplished Palestinian, as noted by your bio. I know you're undertaking a new project, Palestine in Motion. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
First of all, thank you for having me on your show. It's a great honor. Palestine in Motion is an attempt, and I think it's an effort that is part of hopefully a much greater effort of reorienting and refocusing Palestinian history back to where it actually belongs, the people, the Palestinian people, who have been kind of neglected or marginalized in the way that we usually tell history. So it's kind of a people's history of Palestine, but in a more exciting, less academic, digital media format. That's what essentially it is. So it's the story of Palestine knitted through the various narratives of Palestinians who lived through different generations and different historical events that define them as individuals, but also define the experience for entire collectives. The way we are trying to intersect these narratives, and that's where the digital media technology comes in, is by kind of allowing the reader to read the story as a normal narrative, you know, with all the additional supplementary material that you would need to understand the context of that narrative. But you can also read it in a horizontal sense. You can stop at any moment in anyone's story and continue reading the story of someone else. It's our way of saying that ultimately Palestinian history is connected, and the Palestinian narrative, despite of our ideological, political differences, despite of our geographic locations and the walls and the checkpoints and all of this, ultimately we are still the same people. And we all relate to the same history because we are all affected by it in various ways. So that's what the project is the stories of 20 different people, young and old, coming from many different backgrounds, narrating their stories and their hopes and their aspirations. And within that project, we hope that after reading some of these stories, at least the reader can truly familiarize himself or herself with the modern Palestinian identity in the 21st century. What does it mean being a Palestinian today?
Fantastic. And as I understand it, you're not far from launching?
Actually, we're supposed to launch today, in a few hours.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So now, how will we be able to get a copy? Let's give the book,
so
give it a plug.
It's online. So you will go to aljazeera.com and you see the links, you'll see the banners, you will see everything of relevance to.
So,
you will be immediately guided to the project once you go to aljazeera.com.
So if we go aljazeera.com and then Palestine in Motion, that'll take us there.
Aljazeera.net.
.net.
No, just aljazeera.com.
Sorry,
I think
my
the
apologies.
project is going
It's not
to
the
be,
main...
aljazeera.com/Palestine in Motion,
I
indeed.
see. I understand.
But I would say just go to aljazeera.com, yeah.
Okay.
Fantastic.
I also assume it'll be on your blog and the Palestine Chronicle at some stage, because I want to talk about that
yes,
later.
of
We'll put
course.
a plug for
We're
that as well.
trying our best to kind of give it the needed promotion and to kind of steal a little bit of media attention back to Palestine after it's been, sidelined and marginalized for years now.
Yeah, that sounds very exciting. I can't wait to read it, and I'm sure many others can't as well. So, well done.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
let's congratulations again on that work. Let's get back to today and the situation that Palestinians find themselves under. We had the very brave and resilient prisoner strike that just concluded after 41 days. Where do you think where next for the Palestinian prisoners?
Well, where next for the Palestinian prisoners is essentially the same questions. Where next for the Palestinian people? Because it's there is a very strong bond between prisoners, between Palestinian prisoners and the Palestinian people as a whole. They are a representation of the overall subjugation and imprisonment of all Palestinians. Palestinians are living in various forms of imprisonments in the West Bank and Gaza, under siege, behind checkpoints, surrounded by walls, by gates, by illegal settlements, and so forth. So they really they symbolize that collective experience for all Palestinians. This is why the bond between this is why the prisoners, when they went on hunger strike, on April 17th, they unified all Palestinians, regardless of their backgrounds and ideologies and geographies. So where is next for them, I think, is really the fate of the Palestinian people is very much connected to the fate of the prisoners. I think at this point, yes, the media, or at least Palestinian media, is speaking of the great victory of the prisoners after that negotiated deal, supposedly. Personally, I'm not really convinced that it was a great victory, because for me, ultimately, a great victory is for these prisoners not to be prisoners anymore, to be free and to join their families and their communities, and for all Palestinians to be free. But if we are to put it in context, I would say what has really been achieved by this, aside from perhaps easing up some of the restrictions and the hardship that they are facing, is the fact that it seems that after every attempt to divide Palestinians and to sideline their important core issues, it turned out that there is indeed a Palestinian leadership. And that leadership exists, and it's not in Ramallah, it's not Mahmoud Abbas, it's not the Palestinian Authority, it's not the warring factions, it's the prisoners. So the prisoners basically re-emerged as the true Palestinian leadership that managed to unify Palestinians from all walks of life. And I think at some level, needless to say, intellectually as well, we have learned that the Palestinian people do have a leadership, and that leadership showed so much resilience, so much strength and wisdom in their action, and they managed to unify their people and renew the sense of faith between Palestinians and their leadership that has been lost after many years of Oslo and factional conflicts and that sort of thing.
I guess the victory, those who say the victory are talking about that Israel was forced to negotiate after, and you may have heard the ministers and the members of Knesset who started by saying that they can die and we will never talk to them and we will never discuss any deal with them, but by just sitting down for 20 hours and talking to the leadership of the mass hunger strike, this is a victory. And this is the opinion of most of the families of the prisoners.
I guess so. I mean, I think in difficult times, sometimes we have to, try to find the positive in everything and all of that. And I think it's just part of that. But I just, aside from this, I would be quite cautious about using, the kind of terminology that, for example, that the Palestinian Authority in Ramallah was using.
It's the language that's used by the families of prisoners, not by officials. And that's why we're echoing them.
I was going to say as well, I mean,
right.
Just to remind our listeners that what they were striking for was, the basic human rights, such as a telephone call, more visitation rights, books and those sorts of things.
And to stop the medical negligence.
Was there any movement on any of that, or has that moved forward, or has that just been shoved under the carpet and, does anyone know?
See, that's what I'm really still not sure about. That's why I'm saying I'm quite cautious about the use of the word great victory here. It's just the fact that the Israeli prison authorities would validate the prisoners by talking to them. In itself, I can see why this would be seen as a step in the right direction, but without actually implementing all the demands of the prisoners, I would be cautious not to term it a great victory as of yet.
Yeah.
A single prisoner in the past, would go on a hunger strike and eventually would force the Israeli prison authorities to negotiate with him. And that's a single prisoner, and it was good. It was, a lot has been achieved as a result of this. So by having 1,500, at one point 1,700 prisoners go on a hunger strike, and to talk about a great victory just because the Israeli prison authorities would talk to them, I still don't see the great victory there, although I can see why that would be seen as a positive step in the right direction.
Correct. I think, the reality, Ramzy, is on the ground we're all searching for some hope, yeah? Anyway, moving on. So the situation now, Trump has just visited, done his whirlwind tour of Saudi Arabia and Palestine and Israel. And, interestingly, when he met with Benjamin Netanyahu, he said, we've just been to the Middle East. Even though he was in Jerusalem, strange. What are your thoughts on Trump and the future for Palestine?
Right. I think it's really interesting what we are seeing right now, because I think in some strange way, Trump more or less has ended the peace process in the old formulation that was brought by Clinton in 1993 and kind of really been followed religiously by other presidents ever since. As we know, the peace process is really neither a peace nor process. It was just an American diplomatic outlet that allowed it to kind of be part of shaping the political atmosphere in the Middle East. It's about American leadership. It's a strategy in itself. Had nothing really to do with the Palestinian rights and justice for the Palestinian people. And we knew that from the very, very beginning. Unfortunately, not all Palestinians, at least at a leadership level, knew that or wanted to believe that. But that was indeed the case. Under the peace process, Palestinians lost more land, settlements have doubled in size, tripled in population. Palestinians actually lost far more rights under the so-called peace process than prior to it. So we were all eager really to see the end of that charade and the beginning of something else, something new, and something that's not dictated on Palestinians by the American administration. Trump, in some strange way, kind of ended that. He ended that in the sense that, one state, two states, whatever you guys agree on, I don't have any qualms with terminologies. For me, he kind of diverted almost entirely from the old paradigm of how this American peace industry has been in operation since 1991, the Madrid talks, but specifically since the Oslo Accords in 1993 and the Paris Accords and all of that. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, Trump doesn't really have an alternative. And that's precisely what Netanyahu wants. Mm-hmm. Netanyahu doesn't want a structured time frame, certain expectations to be made on Palestinians and Israelis, and that sort of thing. No matter how gentle its demands of Israel, Israel doesn't want to engage in that sort of language altogether. And this is really what Netanyahu's ultimate aim is. Just basically leave us alone, let us complete the colonies, the settlements, and do as we please with Palestinians in the West Bank and Jerusalem. Jerusalem is completely out of the question. Let's not even bring that up at this point. Palestinians in Israel, the Palestine 48, are continue to be treated. Actually, they are treated right now worse than, I would say, any other time in the history of our population and our communities there, because you have this focused set of rules and laws that is targeting them, their language, their culture, their organization, their mobilization, even their identity. This is the kind of environment that Netanyahu and the Israeli government wants to see. They want free range. They want to operate in any way they want. And they are hoping that Trump is the man who is capable of creating that sort of atmosphere. Now, Trump has been talking about the ultimate deal. No one really knows what this ultimate deal is.
Does he know what it is?
But we have some...
Does he know what that is?
I think he does. I think there is a slight idea of what he actually means by it. What we think he means by it, based on his trip to Saudi Arabia, based on his contacts with Arabs, based on some leaked reports in the Israeli and Jewish media, I think they are talking about normalization. They are trying to use the so-called Arab Peace Initiative that was put forward by King Abdullah, I believe, in 2002. They are talking about the element of normalization. I am a busy businessman, and I don't think small picture. I only think big picture. Let's bring the Arabs and Israel together, and let's forge a deal. Yeah. Now, what the Jerusalem Post and Haaretz and other papers are saying is that they believe that the Arabs have downgraded their expectation of what it takes to normalize with Israel. And instead of striking a deal with the Palestinians, ending the conflict once and for all, so-called conflict once and for all, maybe Israel can take few steps in the right directions. Ease the siege a little bit on Gaza, slow down the movement of settlements a little bit, at least some form of expansion, and then the Arabs would be willing to meet Israel somewhere in the middle, and we start a process of normalization.
Fantastic.
I think this is ultimately what Trump's deal is about. He has absolutely no concern whatsoever for justice for the Palestinian people and ending the occupation, and trying to imagine what the region is going to look like under a completely new vision and new outlook.
Ramzy, we're going to continue the discussion after the break. We're going to have to take a break, and we will come back with a few more questions. So please stay with us. You're listening to Palestine Remembered on 855 AM, and our guest, Mr. Ramzy Baroud, on Skype from the United States, a Palestinian activist and writer. So stay with us. Robert, we're going to listen to a song from Algeria. What do you think?
Fantastic. Is this one of my personal collection?
Well, let's find out. His name is Shab Khalid, and he's singing for the city of Wahran.
Oh, this is a wonderful
song. And
he's
telling the people who left Wahran to come back.
Please, come back.
Let's listen to...
Didn't we get this CD out of your car, Robert?
No, you did. You did. So, this is fantastic.
So you're listening to...
I hope you enjoyed as much as I did.
Shab Khalid and Wahran.
صار أجرب منك ناس اشتعرق أراهم في الغربة أحيارا والغربة صعيبة وغدارة قعدوا في الغربة أحيارا والغربة صعيبة وغدارة.
You're listening to Palestine Remembered on 855 AM and it's worth mentioning that due to copyrights constraints, 3CR has a policy of not playing songs on podcasts. So for our listeners who listen to the show and then all of a sudden we say we're going to listen to a break and then a song and then we continue, this is the story. We cannot put songs on our podcast episodes. So stay with us and we will continue the discussion with Ramzy Baroud.
Ramzy, if you can you take us through? We've just spoken about normalisation in Saudi Arabia. The next steps, that's sort of moving in a way where the Arab world is, and led by Saudi Arabia and other Arab countries, wanting to normalise relations with Israel and the United States against a shared enemy. They've called the shared enemy the rise
Iranians.
of Iranians. Can you take us your thoughts through that?
Yes. Fortunately, recently I wrote an article about the changing discourse that followed the 1967 war, how the Arabs kind of redefined their priorities regarding to Palestine. And it's kind of a long and complex subject, but I will summarize it to you by saying after 1967, there was this kind of reality check. Israel is powerful. The U.S. is ready and willing to defend Israel under any circumstance, and we really have no business trying to change this reality. So Arab nationalism kind of began fading. The Nasserite thinking about, kind of going back to the 1948, pre-1948 reality, the refugees back, all of this, that has almost fundamentally changed. And we began talking about a new reality, that of the 1967 borders and new UN resolutions, and we've forgotten almost entirely or completely of the 194, Resolution 194, pertaining to the refugees, 181 regarding the division of Palestine and all of this. And we began talking and referencing a whole new discourse on Palestine. That really kind of continued for years and years until we reach a point, and I'm talking from the Middle East now, and I've been here for several months traveling in various countries, where Palestine almost doesn't exist on the map of priorities of Arab leaders and Arab governments and the Arab League. There's a whole new priorities there. They are far more concerned about Iran's regional ambitions, and they are willing to actually not just accommodate Israel, but kind of wink work with Israel to defeat Iran and to kind of more or less affect the new, the new look and feel of the Middle East when it's all said and done. Palestine then becomes kind of a bargaining chip. It's this thing that where they are supposedly unified by their need to create peace in Palestine, but in reality they are being unified by the so-called Iranian menace, the Iranian threat.
But Ramzy, can I interrupt you and maybe with a question that don't you think
region, that's where the real obsession is right now, and sadly I think Palestine is going to get victimized in all of this because it's going to be used again as this unifying platform. We're not doing this for ourselves, we're doing it for the Palestinian people, supposedly.
Ramzy, can I ask you about the very same point that Palestine is being hijacked maybe indirectly by one of the projects here, but don't you think that also Iran does that when it talks about Palestine and talks about the resistance, but on ground uses Palestine for its political ambitions? And don't you also think that also the other Turkey-led coalition is indirectly using Palestine? So in the Middle East, everybody is using and hijacking Palestine, not only the Arab-led initiative.
I think you're absolutely right. I think Palestine is being used and abused by all parties involved. Now, we kind of have to look at the issue though from kind of less idealistic scenario. If Palestine is being used by the Iranians, but at least the Iranians are not normalizing with Israel. They are not bringing Israeli diplomats to Tehran. They are, in fact, quite supportive of the Palestinian resistance throughout the years. But are they also using Palestine as a rally cry? Of course they are. And the Turks too, and everybody else, really, I would say, since the beginning of the conflict, has kind of utilized Palestine as a unifying factor, as a way to validate themselves politically, and as a rally cry against various enemies, real or imagined.
Yeah,
so yes, you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
this
we've
has
been the football
case
for everybody for a long time. Yeah, Ramzy, BDS, boycott, divestments, and sanctions. This is the rallying call of Palestinian civil society, and modelled on the South Africa anti-apartheid struggle of the 80s and 90s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. Can you take us through, where you're seeing the BDS movement have its victories and its rise?
Yes, absolutely. I think BDS has been the single most important Palestinian tactic used by Palestinians and their supporters throughout the world. I think it has been an extremely important tactic, but that tactic is now really filling a huge gap, I think, in our struggle, in the sense that various Palestinian factions are, fighting their own turf war. Life is becoming extremely difficult on Palestinians in the West Bank and Jerusalem, who are fighting against a dual enemy, frankly. And that kind of leaves us a huge vacuum of the need to utilize the energies of Palestinians and their supporters around the world, unified by a single common idea. Then BDS arrives, and it was an absolutely brilliant tactic. Now, the thing is, it's important to note that this is nothing new here for Palestinians. Palestinians have utilized non-violent resistance for decades.
Including boycott
started really,
since the 20s.
Yes. Say that again, Robert.
Non-violent resistance, including boycott. Boycott has always been part of the Palestinian non-violence struggle.
Absolutely. In fact, if you go back to history books, you will find that the boycotts of British and Jewish colonies in Palestine actually goes back to the late 19th century. And it culminated in 1936 to the longest strike ever recorded in the history of the Middle East. 6 months, non-stop. And it went all the way until the first Intifada, where it was largely, a 7-year strike, more or less. So we have a huge kind of legacy of that sort of resistance.
Yeah.
What makes BDS particularly important and different, though, is that it took the existing energy of the Palestinian people and it took it globally.
Fantastic.
It took it,
Dr. Ramzy,
yes,
we've run out of time today's show, so can I thank you again from Melbourne to Doha for all of your work. Congratulations on your Palestine in Motion, your upcoming project, and on all of your work. Thank you.
You've been listening to a 3CR podcast produced in the studios of independent community radio station 3CR in Melbourne, Australia. For more information, go to allthews.3cr.org.au.